How's it going, guys? And welcome back to another part of my Ultimate Zane Guide. And in this episode, we're going to be going over every single one of Zane's class mods. And I think that's about all the intro we need, so let's get right on into it. So before we get into the class mods themselves and their actual specific effects, I would like to just quickly go over the passives that every class mod is able to roll. These passives are the three little boosts that you get underneath each class mod. So this here is the full list of all of these passive rolls, excluding the manufacturer bonuses. Manufacturer boost can get a little bit messy just because each manufacturer doesn't get every single possible boost, but the things that it can boost is weapon damage, crit damage, accuracy, fire rate, reload speed, and projectile speed. Something to keep in mind with these weapon manufacturer boosts is the weapon damage itself is just that. It is weapon damage. This isn't actually any sort of good damage bonus for Zane. It is just additive with all the other gun damage he already gets. So generally, if you are going to take one of these manufacturer bonuses, you're going to want crit damage. And speaking of the passives that you're actually going to want, let me narrow down this list to the things that are actually useful to Zane. Now that massive list is significantly more manageable, and I can one by one go through why each of these are good. So for action stole damage, this is the biggest boost that you can actually get to action stole damage on Zane. If you are doing a action stole focused build, like a Manton Canna spam or just drone, clone, whatever, rolling action stole on your class mod is absolutely a must. However, it can also be good for general builds because it does boost 3 out of 4 of Zane's skills. So while not as good for Zane himself as these other ones, it can still be a good roll to have on just a general class mod. We next have mag size. This is very good for Zane because while it's not straight up damage, it does kind of transfer into overall DPS. Zane gets a fuck ton of fire rate, meaning that you are going to be reloading a lot. Rolling this mag size makes it so you don't have to reload as much, meaning that you have higher overall DPS because there's way less downtime. Splash damage and splash radius, of course, with Eraser multiply over and over again. This is the basis of the Borsplosion build, but also just rolling splash damage can be very good for Zane, as there are a lot of really good splash damage guns that Zane can use very well, and splash damage is a multiplicative boost within his formula. So as long as you find yourself often using any sort of splash damage, this is a very good roll. Similarly is crit damage, which is another multiplicative boost for Zane. However, this one is significantly more generalized than splash damage, as crit damage applies to literally everything that you could ever use. This is one of the strongest rolls for Zane. And the second strongest roll is type damage. This is your SMG damage or pistol damage or heavy weapon damage, those sorts of things, because these damages aren't actually just weapon damage. These are V2 damage, meaning that like crit and splash, this is a multiplicative bonus. So when you are going for that god roll class mod with those beautiful passives, generally this is the list of all the possible passives that you are going to want to roll when you're out hunting for that. So moving on to our actual class mods, I will be going over all of them in no particular order, but I will timestamp each one if there is a specific class mod that you would like to hear about. Starting us off here will be the Techspert. This class mod for the still rolls can have ready for action, rise to the occasion, or really expensive jacket. The Techspert provides Zane with a kill still, where after you kill, you have a 35% chance to recharge Sentinel's cooldown and duration. This class mod really has no point if you're investing in a green tree build, which it seems like this class mod is supposed to synergize with. Then you can just move down to Calm Cool Collected and get both of your action stole durations or cooldowns reset. Alternatively, you could just not invest that many points into Zane's worst tree and instead use a Spy or Seein Dead for unlimited action stole duration. I really can't possibly think of any time you'd ever want to use this class mod outside of like having it world drop early game. Next is the Shockerator, which can roll with Duct Tape mod, Pocket Full of Grenades, and Best Served Cold. The Shockerator grants Zane's Digiclone the binary system augment, and also whenever clone receives melee damage, it creates a Shock Nova. This Shock Nova, along with of course binary system as well, gets action stole damage, splash damage, and mayhem scaling boosts. Best Served Cold also gets mayhem scaling, so if you get a Shockerator with 5 out of 5 action stole damage and splash damage on it, I feel like there is definitely a build here that can work for mobbing and maybe some boss cheese as well. The Critical Mass is able to roll with Deja Vu, Playing Dirty, and Domino Effect. What this class mod does does is on kill from a critical hit specifically, 100% of Zane's ammo is returned to his magazine. This sounds sort of interesting. I mean, getting a critical kill isn't that difficult. The issue is that this pulls from Zane's ammo reserves, so you aren't getting free ammo here. It's just gonna run out of ammo at pretty much the same rate you were going to anyways, just without the reload animation. And for some reason, this rolls with Deja Vu, which is pretty much the exact same effect, except it doesn't fully reload your ammo, just provides you with one ammo back. So if you roll Deja Vu on this class mod, it's completely worthless. This class mod is just all over the place. The other skills that it provides aren't that amazing of boosts. It's just, there's nothing redeeming about this class mod whatsoever. Next is the Cold Warrior. This class mod rolls with Synchronicity, Trick of the Light, and Ready for Action. Whenever Zane freezes an enemy, a random status effect is applied to them immediately. This is another class mod that is pretty good for early game. The only issue is that it's very contingent on actually freezing things, so you do want to make sure that you have an easy way of doing that, whether that be a very good cryo gun or a frozen heart or brain freeze or something like that. But overall, the skill rolls are not that amazing on this, and status effect damage does not scale well into mayhem levels, so this really does not have a place in the endgame whatsoever. This is completely trash. There's literally no place for it. The only synergy that it has is with Harmageddon, and even then Harmageddon isn't that great of a skill, and isn't even a Zane specific skill. So this next set of class mods definitely has a lot more to them, and we are going to start out with the Hustler. The Hustler is able to roll with Brain Freeze, Adrenaline, and Like a Ghost. Out of these three, really you want Brain Freeze, the other two aren't that great. The Hustler provides Zane with a stacking critical hit damage whenever he doesn't hit a critical hit, and also a 5% chance for non-critical hits to score a critical hit, which consumes the stacks. This stacks up to 5 times. What is important to note about the Hustler is that these are not real crits. These are like flex fadeaway crits where they aren't really critical hits. They don't really boost from critical hit damage itself, but they do proc critical hit effects. So specific guns that have critical hit effects, like the Queen's Toll, will proc on these crits. And of course, Eraser procs on these crits. When Eraser procs on these crits, it creates another projectile which gets your splash damage boost, meaning splash damage radius and splash damage, and getting these huge crit chains, because this class mod lets splash damage crit, is the basis of the Borsplosion build, which is pretty much the only purpose that this class mod has. Outside of that, its uses are incredibly limited, and it doesn't really give you anything that another class mod doesn't do better. So the Spy and the Seein Dead are both similar and very different, so I'm going to kind of go over them together here because they both provide kill skill boosts. This is a full color-coded list of Zane's kill skills that these kill skill boosts provide benefits to. Best Serve Cold, Futility Belt, Donnybrook, Fractal Frags, Pocket Full of Grenades, Violent Speed, Cool Hand, Salvation, Violent Violence, Playing Dirty, Good Misfortune, Commitment, and Headsman's Hand. This is why kill skill boosts are so important to Zane, because it boosts a shit ton of his best skills. So now into each class mod specifically, Seein Dead rolls with Violent Violence, Playing Dirty, and Donnybrook. Whenever Zane damages an enemy with his weapon, he has a chance to automatically activate all of his kill skills. Additionally, his kill skills gain a 10% effective bonus. This class mod is a fantastic, just sort of all-rounder plug-and-play class mod for Zane. You can just kind of slap it on to pretty much any build, and it'll just provide you a damage boost and fantastic utility to that build. The skills this can roll with are all pretty decent. Playing Dirty isn't exactly necessary, and Violent Violence is kind of overkill, but if you can get a 5 out of 5 on Donnybrook, that is probably your best option here, but all the different rolls are still very effective. If you also put a single point into Good Misfortune, of course, proccing your kill skills over and over again as you're firing means that your action skills will be up indefinitely, which is fantastic for double active action skill builds. Moving on to the Spy, it can roll with Headsman's Hand, Our Man Flint, and Commitment. Whenever Zane uses the last charge on his Mantis Cannon, he activates all of his kill skills. Zane's kill skills gain a 10% effectiveness and 8-second duration boost. So all of the skill rolls are absolutely amazing. You always want to make sure you have a point into Our Man Flint on this class mod, and then your other points can be distributed however, but a god roll is definitely getting 4 out of 5 into Headsman's Hand. As I said, this serves a very similar function to the Seein Dead. It lets you keep your action skills up indefinitely and is a very good all-rounder sort of class mod. But this specifically has way better synergy with builds that have Mantis Cannon for a very obvious reason. If you are running a build with Mantis instead of having 2 active action stalls, the Spy is by far and away significantly better than the Seein Dead in almost every situation, especially if you're able to get a very good roll on those stills, because you are getting 50% bonus V2 damage, being able to get 2 out of 1 in Our Man Flint. Along with that, with 4 out of 5 in Headsman's Hand, that is a 72% or 108%, including your kill steal boost, crit damage, or if you get 4 out of 5 in Commitment, that is 72% or 108%, including your kill steal boost in gun damage. As I said, Headsman's Hand is definitely better of the two, but both are incredible skills. And now to the Executor, which is probably Zane's highest damage class mod for general mobbing and even bossing in a couple situations. This class mod can roll with Good Misfortune, Playing Dirty, and Violent Violence, but these aren't the main point of this class mod. This class mod provides is another kill steal to Zane. Whenever Zane kills an enemy, he gains increased accuracy, handling, crit damage, status effect damage, and status effect chance. He also gets a bonus to cryo damage. So the accuracy, handling, status damage, and status effect chance are all pretty decent and good utility. However, that crit damage and that cryo damage is insane. These are, of course, both multiplicative. So base, you're getting a 20% boost to cryo damage and 75% boost to crit damage. However, this is a kill steal, which means it benefits from the kill steal bonuses found within Zane's tree. This boosts it up to 28% cryo damage and 105 crit damage. There is literally no competition to the Executor. This is by far your highest damage option for general play, especially for mobbing. The only thing that outdamages this is perhaps a class mod with 5 out of 5 rolls in Violent Momentum. However, those types of class mods are really only usable for bossing. And even then, if you're able to hit a crit on a boss, in an optimal situation, the Executor can probably compare pretty decently to a 5 out of 5 Violent Momentum class mod. And even comparing to a God Roll Spy, the Spy gives about 52% bonus crit and 25% V2 damage. The V2 damage is better in some builds for further diversification between your damage numbers, but you're getting over double the crit damage from the Executor. The only downside of this class mod is that the still rolls are pretty crappy. The best options you have really are Violent Violence and Good Misfortune. Good Misfortune is very good if you can get 3 out of 3 into, because this class mod does make it so that you can't really have your stills up indefinitely, but you can have them up for a very long time, and Zane has a lot of cooldown rate, so it's not that big of a deal. But now let's talk about class mods that can roll 5 out of 5 in Violent Momentum and why that is such a big deal. So why is it such a big deal? Well, simply Violent Momentum is Zane's best still in the entire game. It is what gives him insane amounts of damage and lets him hit these huge boss-killing one-shots and all that sort of shit. I don't want to get into it too deeply here because there's more information in a couple of the other videos I've already made, but Violent Momentum can hit up to insane damage boost numbers, and this is where all of Zane's weapon damage comes from pretty much. So you can already hit pretty much like 400% weapon damage with 5 out of 5, and now you're doubling it to 10 out of 5. That's why class mods that roll Violent Momentum are so important, because if you can roll 5 out of 5 in them, that is your boss killing class mod forever. There is really nothing in the game that's gonna outdamage that. But this is where a misconception comes in, and that's where we're gonna talk about the Antifreeze. The Antifreeze can roll with Violent Speed, Supersonic Man, and of course, Violent Momentum. What's misleading about this class mod is all the hype around it, because the only reason that this class mod is good is because it can roll 5 out of 5 in Violent Momentum. The damage boost that you get from sliding or being airborne is simply 40% weapon damage. When you're having 5 out of 5 in Violent Momentum, you're already getting like upwards of 1000% gun damage. 40% isn't going to be that much of a boost. It's just a little bit better than other options. But finding a purple class mod with 5 out of 5 in Violent Momentum is probably still better than having 3 out of 5 in Violent Momentum on an Antifreeze. Of course, this is ignoring passive rolls and such, but that 5 out of 5 is so important, and that is why people like the Antifreeze for bossing. The actual passive part of it is kind of garbage, but what often gets overlooked because of this is the Infiltrator. The Infiltrator can roll with Supersonic Man, Like a Ghost, and of course Violent Momentum. Along with that, Zane's weapon damage and movement speed are increased by 15% the lower his shield, the greater the bonus this is. Whenever Zane activates an action skill, he then breaks his shield. The Infiltrator is another class mod that can roll 5 out of 5 in Violent Momentum, and is probably a much easier farm than the Antifreeze. It is hard to say which of these ends up out damaging the other, because this only gives a 15% boost to weapon damage, but it gives a 15% to movement speed, and that movement speed probably translates to more than 40% weapon damage. But really, these are going to output similar damage numbers because as long as you have 5 out of 5 in Violent Momentum and the same passive rolls on each, they're going to be similar enough and one-shotting bosses anyways. But the Infiltrator also actually is usable as a mobbing class mod. That second part, whenever Zane activates an action skill, he breaks his shield. This works similarly to Ass Break, the anointment. However, instead of breaking and filling, this fills and then breaks, so that you still get those shield effects. So if you're using a build where you have a specific anointment on your shield that isn't able to be Ass Break, this can be very, very important because you can still use very strong shields like the Frozen Heart for Novas or the Revolter for that shock damage. This class mod is very niche, but it does have plenty of uses and really is not talked about within the community all that much. It can open up a lot of different build possibilities and is actually what makes my terror build that I uploaded earlier in the year very strong, because I'm still able to use a Revolter with that build even though I can't use the Ass Break anointment on that shield. And finally, probably what I think is one of the more disappointing class mods is the Conductor, because this class mod is so close to actually being very good and opening up a lot of different build possibilities, it just doesn't quite hit that mark. This class mod can roll with Good Misfortune, Borrowed Time, and Adrenaline, all kind of not amazing skills. You really don't need to focus in on any one of these in particular. They're all pretty whatever. But what the Conductor gives is 50% bonus shock damage based on Zane's remaining action skill duration. The more duration remaining, the greater this bonus, the effect stacks. So what this means is that when you have 2 active action skills up and running, at the same time you are getting 100% bonus shock damage. The problem comes in of what you are giving up to use this class mod. Because this is a class mod, you can't use the Seein Dead or the Spy to keep your action skills up, and you can't use the Revolter, which also gives you 100% bonus shock damage, because you can't use the Mantis Cannon because that's not an active action skill. So you are losing out not only on a way easier to get 100% bonus shock damage, but you're also losing out on different damages from your class mods like the Executor or the Spy or literally anything else. You can just get 50% bonus shock damage by using a Mantis Cannon and 1 action skill and a Revolter to then boost it to a total of 150% bonus shock damage. However, why? Why would you do that? That makes no sense, because then you're just using half of the potential of this class mod and only getting 50% bonus shock damage from your class mod, when instead you could just switch to an Executor and be getting 28% cryo damage on top of 108% crit damage. This class mod is incredibly aggravating because it could actually make Green Tree builds with Calm Cool Collected worthwhile to use, but it needs to give way more shock damage than it does, because right now you are losing out on so much to go with this class mod over literally anything else. You already would have to be sacrificing going down some of Zane's best trees to get some of Zane's best skills just to go down and get Calm Cool Collected. I have tried so hard with so many different things to try and make this class mod actually work and make it feel like it's actually worthwhile to invest the fucking effort into using, but there is no way to do it. It's completely impossible. There is no way around the fact that using the Conductor is a waste of a class mod slot, and it just sucks because on paper it sounds so good. Anyways, with that rant about the Conductor, that's gonna about do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys learned something. Please like, comment, subscribe, all of that. If you do have any questions about anything I talked about here, feel free to leave it in the comments and I will respond to you. And while you're down there, maybe check out the link in the description and go follow my Twitch. And I will see you guys in the next one, where hopefully I will sound like myself again and not like a dying cat.